All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Inevitable Podcast. I'm your host, Pedro Sorin. As you know, I'm an investor, a VC, author, entrepreneur. I'm the founder of Atman, where we partner with inevitable people with a seed and pre-seed fund investing in the US and Latam, where every founder that we partner with is also a partner in the fund. The Inevitable Podcast is all about connecting with people that I believe are absolutely incredible and inevitable, uh, with either tools or secrets, right? Towards everything that is about building world class organizations. So today I have the distinct pleasure of having Mr. Donato Helbling here at the pod. So thank you so much for joining us today, Donato. I'm super excited about this episode. Um,
Thank you,
and
Pedro.
for
Thanks for
those,
the opportunity to share with you.
it, it, it's our pleasure. I think this has been one of the most fun ones, and for those that don't know, I met Donato when we were myself and Alessio. That's also the founder of Pipefy. We're celebrating, him having raised his Series C. And Donato is the founder of the Miami Ice Club, which is basically a community dedicated for cultivating regular breath work and cold exposure practice, which ultimately helps members like myself activate their ability to regulate their autonomic nervous system, which we'll talk more about later on. But more than that, aside from him being the only certified Wim Hof instructor in South Florida, trained directly under the Iceman himself, he also has 15 years of experience between being an engineer, a black belt Budokon instructor, yoga, martial arts, interesting things with also guns and the Zen art of shooting, meditation, life coaching in general, just this incredible life force of positive energy. So, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you, Donato, for joining our show.
Thank you, brother. So good to see you, man. And even through the distance, it's always good to see you, my friend.
Always a pleasure.
Um,
So,
hey,
no,
what
go
a
ahead.
good. Thank you for having me. Because for me, it's after listening to your podcast, it's usually about these startups and all these beautiful companies. So I think today's going to be a little different than what your audience is used to, right?
That's right. But ultimately, I think that there's a part that is different, but there's also another part that is actually very correlated with what the audience cares, which is about being the best version of yourself in, on a continued basis, right? So ultimately, not comparing yourself to others, but just to who you were yesterday and ultimately getting better and better. So for me, at least, and you probably know this because of, I guess, my personality, but also kind of like how much I've advocated for the whole thing. Like the Ice Club changed my life completely. I think I probably brought maybe, I don't know, 35 new people in the last 3 4 months, something like that. And it's been
Yes. Yeah.
uh, and we're just getting started, right? Like this whole thing has changed my life, and it's funny because I've heard about Wim Hof and ice exposure as I was recording the podcast. This was episode number 3 with a founder called Paolo Orioni, and he said, "Hey, have you ever heard of this guy?" And so there's an actual episode of me on the record saying, "No, I don't even know who this person is," which is an interesting place. If you look at where I am right now with this type of ritual. So, but I'd love to just learn. Let's get it started from the top, basically. So, you are Argentinian, right? So, how was your childhood, and where did you grow up? Like, tell us a little bit more about you and your story.
Okay, so I was born in Argentina. I was there until my early teenage years. And then I moved to Venezuela, where I would say it's like probably the best years of my life doing high school at the peak of Venezuela's glory. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful childhood, man. I mean, I'm lucky to have my parents still together. I'm an only child, so I spent a lot of time by myself, a lot of introspective time for me. I was a fat kid. I was very chubby when I was little. So you know how it is in South America. If you're chubby, you can't play football. So if you can't play football, you can't do anything. So I was not into my body at all when being a kid. So I was more of an intellectual kid. I was very into computers. My dad's an engineer. My mom's an architect. So I grew up in a family where we value intellectual skill a lot. I decided to become an engineer. I studied electrical and computer engineering in Drexel University in Philadelphia. So I moved to the United States at the age of 17 to study engineering. I mean, that was the official story. But really, also what I was doing, other than studying engineering, is I went deep into martial arts. At the end of my high school years in Venezuela, I actually started playing rugby. So I started kind of falling in love with getting beat up with contact, right? And martial arts was something that always interested me, especially the philosophical part. So when I moved to the United States, with so much availability of different martial arts, I was able to get into a lot of different martial arts. So I studied kung fu, taekwondo, a few different styles of karate. I studied capoeira. I studied Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which I'm still involved in. Krav Maga, a bunch of martial arts. And then while I was in engineering school, while a lot of my friends were taking electives, doing more engineering courses, I was like, this is enough studying engineering and math. I was studying philosophy, psychology, anthropology, the history of the automobile, wealth and power, all these sociology classes that were just fascinating to me. To me, the most interesting machine you can study is the human. Computers just started boring me. You can just do cool things with them. But that ultimately, how we perceive the world and how we move and how we show up as people and how we treat each other and how we interact with each other. To me, that was always the most fascinating thing. Martial arts brought me into meditation, and then meditation brought me into yoga. So by the time I graduated from college, I moved from Philadelphia. I moved to Miami because ironically, I got tired of the cold. And the cold, more than anything, the coldness of the people. For me, having grown up in South America, I just missed the way that we interact with people, the way that we treat people, the warmth of our people. So I figured if I want to be in South America, but I want to stay in the United States, then I could move to the capital of South America, Miami. So in 2005, I came here, and I've seen this city change into what the craziness that it is today, and the cool town that going from like this weird little beach town to becoming this amazing metropolis that everyone just wants to be in now. I know you're a big fan of what Miami is becoming. We always talk about this, so it's really cool, man. So that's kind of like the short story. But when I came to Miami, I became involved with Budokon. Budokon, it's my passion and my main practice, which is a mix of yoga, martial arts, meditation, animal locomotion, mobility, mind science. And this was the art that kind of connected everything for me. Because as I started working full-time as an engineer, the time availability is not, it wasn't so much there. And I was doing a lot of big infrastructure projects here in Miami. So I was very, very involved in very big projects. And I did not have time to do yoga and martial arts and meditate and do all of this. So Budokon just offered everything. And I just fell in love with the practice and how philosophical it was. And I decided to become an instructor. I was going to become a yoga instructor because I was deep into yoga at the time in my early time here in Miami. But when I found Budokon, I was like, no, this is what I want to do. So I became the first black belt in Budokon. So it was a younger system that my teacher created in the early 2000s. And he started it in California. And then so I got a chance to get introduced here. And then I was traveling a lot. So I became the first black belt and the first professor under the system. And I got a chance to travel the world and teach the system. We taught at a lot of different yoga conferences, at a lot of martial arts events. We went to Japan to teach a bunch of times. So Budokon really was the practice that changed my life because it actually made me accept the fact that I'm an artist, and martial arts was the first place where I was able to express that and be able to teach. I love teaching. I mean, you've seen me teach, and it's my passion. So while I still do engineering, while I still am involved, it's interesting because even though we're talking a lot about this, we've had some conversations about my engineering work. You have come to see some of the work that I do, and also been involved with a lot of startups. I had an incubator for a while, offering technical advice to a lot of startups. I have a startup myself, Open Seed, which you've heard about with the meditation pods. So it's been a lot. It's been a journey of living almost like three lives at the same time, and I love it. So that's kind of the short version of how I ended up here.
Awesome. No, thank you for all the details. So I've done 7 years of I've done 6 years of judo and 7 years of karate, Shutokan. But what's the difference? Like, how does it work with Budokon in terms of just do you fight, or is it more abstract? And because and I say that also with wanting your opinion in regards to the I read, Rickson Gracie's book, Breathe, right?
Mhm.
Which is a very
Yeah.
interesting book. And it seems like jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu seems like the most complete way of actually learning how to be dangerous and peaceful at the same time. So I want to just,
Yeah.
I guess two questions. So how does Budokan
Okay,
actually
let's do
work?
it.
And then
Okay,
second,
so Budokon
complete one or
let's see. Well, Budokon is in a system that where you get to learn all these different disciplines. So we actually our our school is actually called Budokon University. It's a place where you learn yoga and martial arts and mobility and philosophy and nutrition. It's almost like you can come to this particular place and kind of specialize or take any track that you wanted to take within one school. The ones like me that have learned the full system, then that means that we've completed each one of these tracks. And in a Budokon yoga class, it's a lot like a yoga class, but it has a lot of influence of martial arts. So a lot of the ways that we move are a lot more fluid. They're not so static. It's not so posture based, but more transition based. So a Budokon yoga class is a really beautiful expression of the fluidity of martial arts, but just to explore the restorative and therapeutic aspects of the yogic practice. Now, when you come to one of our martial arts class, it's just like any other MMA class. You come, you put gloves on, you learn to punch, you learn to kick, and then you take people to the floor and you learn to, take their arms, choke them out, break their legs. The same thing as any MMA class. So we have a very strong Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu component in our MMA style. We do a lot of boxing punches, and then our main style for kicking is Taekwondo. So we learn a lot of Olympic style Taekwondo kicking, a lot of really traditional American boxing hand techniques, and then on the floor game it's BJJ. So, and then when you're doing the mind science component, it's a lot of lecturing and it's a lot of group sessions, like a lot of, I don't want to call it group therapy, but definitely a lot of group conversations where we try to help each other figure out why we're stuck in our lives or what's holding us back or what could be our limiting belief or a blind spot that we may be operating under. So when you think about Budokon and how it works, it just really depends on what day and what class you're in. When people say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of the best ways to learn to be peaceful and learn to be dangerous, I would say that Budokon is an even better way to become more dangerous and more peaceful. Not that it's better, it's just that we teach more things. I'm actually the
do
firearms
you still teach
instructor within
them,
our
or
school. Excuse me?
do you still teach it, or is it there are still classes, Budokan classes in Miami?
Well, right now I don't know if you heard about this thing that happened a few years ago called the end of the world. During COVID, we closed our academy here, and we bought a retreat center in Montana. So a lot of our education now happens there. I do teach workshops here sometimes, and I do have a lot of private students that I still train. And I also direct Budokon in Miami. So I have a lot of teachers that have graduated under our program that teach in Miami. So I help them coordinate their classes, and I give them direction and I give them advice. So I'm still actively teaching, but not regular classes like you see me teaching the Ice Club. When we decided to move the school to Montana, and during the lockdown, I didn't want to teach online. Teaching martial arts online to me was a little, it didn't feel honest to me. So I just started focusing on teaching the Wim Hof Method, and I just created, and I just focused 100% on that. So I stopped teaching Budokon public classes, and I just went full force with the Ice Club. And also, I started working as an engineer full time again. So it took some of the time away that I used to do for Budokon. But as I was saying, in Budokon, we also learn weapons. So we learn firearms. I'm actually the main firearms instructor for Budokon University. So when you think of someone that's really dangerous, our black belts are pretty dangerous people, but they're all just people who love life, very artistic, very creative people. We're also, all of us are life coaches. So a lot of us have a pretty strong, not only coaching, but also philosophical mind. We're very interested in understanding how the human experience works. So I feel that when it comes time to make someone very peaceful, the first thing you got to do is not just make him dangerous, but also make him understand the nature of the human experience. So that's one of my main passions, understanding, okay, what is this person going through, and how can I be of service to them? And sometimes that's kicking their ass is the best thing you can do. But most of the time, it's not the case. But I would say most, 99.999% of the time, you don't have to go there.
One of my favorite quotes, right, is that Latin quote, "Si vis pacem para bellum," which is ultimately, if you want peace, always be ready for war. And I think that when it comes to philosophy or just psychology in general, there are moments in life where you do get punched in the face, and you end up either deeply connecting with a darker side, that you might have inside, right? Maybe someone betrays you, or you have a big problem, and instinctively, you might want to resort to. I'm talking about personal experiences as well, right? Like you might want to resort to violence, or you are upset, or you're this. So I really like this duality that you're talking about, because I fundamentally think that I became a far better person. I don't know if that's true for you, but in terms of like just being kinder, more empathetic, doing charity work, when I understood the capabilities of being a very bad person that I had inside of me, and then just controlling and subduing those instincts for good things.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's if you don't know how to fight, you're always going to be scared of fighting. So you're going to live your life avoiding conflict. And conflict is inevitable. And in the work that entrepreneurs do, like if you're not ready to fight, you're not ready to start a company. Like that company that you start is going to fight you every day. Your company wants to stop existing every single day. And if you're not going to wake up and just punch it in the face, it's not going to happen. You're fighting all odds every day. So this is not literal fighting, but the urge to the skill of knowing when. In Budokon we have a saying, there's a time for the sit and there's a time for the sword. Okay, so there's a time where you just gotta let things be the way they are, and there's times when you gotta and you gotta do what you gotta do. And it's the ability to discern when it's time for one and when it's time for the other, and having the ability and the willingness to do both. Some people can only do one. Some people can only fight and some people can only sit. You have to be able to do both so that then you have choice. Because when you have choice, you have power. But if you're just doing the one thing that you know to do, then you're not in choice. You're just in pattern. You're just in a momentum, but you're not in power. Make sense? So for me, is I always tell people, it's like everyone should have a black belt. Everyone in the world should be a black belt. Never, there would be no fight. You know. So.
No, I love it, but I think I really also like the way that you're talking about that every day. You're fighting, and your company wants to die, right? At least in the very, very early days, which is usually when people like me partner with entrepreneurs. That's true, but I've had many other companies that I've invested in that have had near death experiences after they became multi-billion-dollar businesses as well. So the it reminds me of ultimately like self-reliance, right? Like there's that essay from Emerson about that, or ultimately this connection with something greater than yourself. You can call it whatever you want, but it's what gives you volition in life, that desire to not give up, right? Because so how do you get that for yourself? Because you're also someone that
grit.
You start a lot of different things, and you run multiple different operations and businesses. So you're a man of many layers, and I appreciate that about you. So just wanted to understand, where do you get the desire to just have this initiative in your life?
I like seeing things happen, man. I like pushing the thing and see what it can do. I like when an idea becomes materialized, and to me that's a passion. To me, when I have something in my head and I see potential for it, I want to see it through, and it's almost an urge that I have. I found that is my artistic expression. That is that creative force that I have inside of me, that just I want to do it. I want to see these things happen. I want to also I like I think we've had this conversation sometimes, that my interest, usually the things that I start have an impact on people, and it's almost like I don't think that they're mine. I think that these things are universal, and I'm just helping them exist. Because, like the Ice Club, like I didn't invent the Ice Club. I mean, I guess I did, but I didn't do it for me. I did it because I knew it had to be done. Like I sometimes it's almost like you see the future. You're like, oh, there's this thing that in my head it always existed. It just wasn't happening now. So for me, I'm just an agent of time. I just show up to make that thing that should already exist. And once I see it, it's almost like I already see it existing, but no one else can see it. So I'm like, I'm going to do whatever it takes so that everyone can see this thing, because I can see it clear. And for me, that is that to me is almost an urge. There's a sense of urgency within me that this needs to happen. There's other ideas that I have that I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. And I've had ideas that are way better business, and I just don't care, because I'm not motivated by the money that an idea will bring. I'm more motivated by the people that the idea will bring, and by what we can do after that. It's like, okay, like this is like it's happening right now. The fact that I have you, the fact that I'm on your podcast, or the fact that I have you as a friend in my life, that's worth the Ice Club to me. And I can say this about you, and I can say this about a bunch of other friends that I have from the Ice Club. So for me, I think that the grit, martial arts taught me to grind, taught me that the fight's not over. That's something that martial arts teaches you, that the fight's not over until it's over. Now, something that yoga teaches you is that you can be in the most twisted position. You can still breathe. You can still be okay. And there's something to learn there. So when you have all these different experiences that I've gone through, there's so many different lessons. So now when I'm creating a new startup or a new initiative, it's almost like I'm interested in seeing where is it going to go wrong. And when it goes wrong and it gets stuck, that's when the engineer comes out. It's like, okay, the machine's not working. Let me twist this. Let me tweak that. Let me put some oil here. And now it's running again. All right, cool. So it's so when you ask me, it's like, where do I get the drive? It's I want to see what I can do. I'm just like, let's see what this thing happens. And then I trust now. I'm at a point in my life where I trust my intentions and I trust my heart to the point where I know that whatever I put my time into, it's going to help people and it's going to make a difference for other people. So I guess that's where it comes from. Just wanting to do cool stuff.
For me, it has made a massive difference. As you know, I'm just putting it on the record here. So for any founder listening, very easy to get in touch with me. I've taken many. If you're in Miami, let me know, or you can ping Donato directly as well and show up to a class. It will change your life. So for many reasons, which we'll get into. But I wanted to ask you this, and I would, now can ask this for actually on the record. So it's ultimately, how did you lose your ice virginity? Basically, how did it all start for you?
Oh, very cool. Okay, so around 2016, 2017, I was experiencing like a bit of like I was starting to fall out of love with my practice with Budokon. Not because Budokon changed or because anything in particular. It was just like the particular time in my life that I was going through. I had some stuff in my personal life. And for some reason, I took it out on Budokon, right? I started trying to, when you're going through some struggle in your life, sometimes you just want to blame it on everything except the thing, right? So for some reason, I was like starting to just overthink what I was doing with Budokon, and I was starting to fall out of love with it, which I'm glad I never did. I'm still very much in love with my practice. But at the time, a few people had told me about Wim Hof, and they're like, hey, you do all these crazy things. Have you done Wim Hof? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you should do it. And I'm like, well, have you done it? And they're like, no, I haven't done it. But since you do all these crazy things, maybe you should do it. And I'm like, why don't you do your homework? You let me know. So, but, being in the wellness industry, being involved in pioneering a lot of these movement practices, and always here, within the Miami wellness community, we were the ones that were mixing yoga with martial arts, and everyone else was like, yoga and martial arts can't be mixed. And we're like, yeah, it totally can be done. And we were doing it and having a great time with it. So people knew that we were doing weird stuff, so they recommended it to me many times. I always said no, because I was closed-minded. I was being an idiot. and until one day, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, says, hey, I'm going to Poland to train with Wim Hof. And I want you to come with me. We've been talking about taking a trip together. Let's go. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And we signed up to go to Poland. I had never done an ice bath. And I just decided to go to Poland to climb a mountain with Wim Hof, right? Really, because I wanted to
started already with
the
food thing, basically.
I just signed up for that. Yeah, I just went full in. Because it just kept coming back. Like every year or every 2 years, somebody would say something about it. And I was like, this keeps coming back into my life. There's a reason. And then my best friend says, hey, we wanted to go on a trip. How about we go to Poland and do that? And I was like, okay, this is enough. Okay, I'll do it. Let's go. Now, when we were about to go, my cousin in Argentina got this freak disease and passed away. 24 hours, he was gone. And I was like, shit. And this was my primo hermano, like my first cousin, So I was like, okay, I got to go to Argentina. I'm not going to Poland. But my friend went. And when he came back from Poland, he said, look, the experience was amazing. The Wim is a super cool guy. You're going to love meeting him. But honestly, you're going to love teaching this. And I was like, And that actually piqued my interest even more. Because I was just going to go on a trip with my friend to do this crazy thing. And then when he comes back, he's like, dude, you're going to love teaching this. You're going to fucking love teaching this. And I said, okay, I got to try it. So I reached out to the Wim Hof Academy, and I told them, hey, I couldn't go to Poland because of a death in my family, but I'm interested in knowing the system, because I'm considering the possibility of potentially teaching this, even though I hadn't done it. I trust my friend, and here we go. And he's like, cool. One of our best teachers is in West Palm Beach. You should go train with her. She says, okay, cool. So I went right away to a workshop exactly like the one that you took with me, one of those Wim Hof Fundamentals courses where we met. And I did the course, and I was like, oh, this is really cool, because you know all the science and all the physiology. I was like, I'm into this. And then it came time for the ice bath. Right. We first did the breath work. The breath work blew my mind. I could not believe, even though I had done breath work through martial arts, I had done breath work through yoga, I had never experienced breath work like that, right? Like the one that we do at the ice club. And then it came time for the ice bath. At the time, there were 2 tubs full of ice, and I was in the workshop with my wife at the time. And we're like, okay. And they were like, hey, couples that ice together, you guys should go together. And we're like, okay, let's do this. I'm looking at the ice and I'm like, I have no fucking clue what this is going to be like. But I'll do it. Like I'm like, I've done harder things, I'm sure. So I go inside of the ice. I get in. And I felt helpless. I felt so incredibly cold. And so, like, I can't do anything. I, like, choked. I couldn't breathe. I was like, ah! And I was just shriveled and powerless. And I felt like a child. I felt so, and here I am, I was standing outside. I was like, here I am, black belt. I just came from fighting this guy. I just came from training. This is going to be easy. I got in, and I felt like I was the weakest person in the world. Everything that I had learned taught me nothing. I just sat in there and I was like, fuck. Like I felt like I couldn't do anything. And I was like, and it was just so powerless. I was blown away by how I felt. I felt like nothing. And then I look over to the side and my wife is like, loving it. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now? So it just hit me in so many levels. Like it hit me in the ego. It hit me in all the skill that I had. It just made me reimagine everything about myself. And I was like, this is my new teacher. Like I met my new teacher that day. And I knew that this is my new journey. This is the next phase of my personal development journey. And it was because I had been looking for something. Because as much as I love martial arts and as much as I like yoga, it's just too complicated. It's awesome. All the complexity of it, I would not replace it with anything. It's forged me into the man that I am today. Like the person that you know is the product of the training, right? And I guess whatever I was born with. But the training made me the person that I am today. I would not replace it with anything. But I was ready for something that was simple and undeniable. And like I say, it's like, to me, getting in that ice and meeting my new teacher was inevitable. Like I knew I was in a rut. I was stuck. I was falling out of love with my practice. And I was falling out of love with developing myself. That was really the problem. I got to a point where I was just so overwhelmed with life that I didn't want to learn anything else. It was a very scary time for me. And when I found the ice, I was like, here's my new sensei right here. And I just came back. It was like, and when I got, and as soon as I said that, I felt incredible. My power came back. I softened and I did an ice bath like I haven't done again. It was just like, and because I just accepted that this is who I am now. This is what's going to happen in my life now. And since then, well, the rest is history, I guess. I'm teaching that thing that made me feel like that. I am committed to making everyone feel. Because what you feel when you get out of the ice bath is that you can take over the universe, which
it's incredible.
We're doing. Right?
And the beautiful thing is that you're just, you're using literally ice and breath. So no need for any outside drugs. I think that's the That's the feeling of euphoria. And it's interesting when you go through the workshop with you as well, how you explain about the increase in the base levels of oxytocin and dopamine, right? Or the whole process of hormesis. That is a funny word.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but
Yeah.
just
Glad you remembered
I
it.
Yes. Well, I for me it changed things because of I started meditating when I was 17. When I moved to Colorado for a good 2.5 years, I was vegetarian, doing yoga 3-4 times a day, and continue to do martial arts. And all these things, like you've said, they were just for me at least, they were just too slow and inconsistent, but
Mhm.
primarily because in general we are inconsistent as people. So the techniques and the flows around everything that can make you feel 100% in the now, present, right? Like, Eckhart Tolle, Ram Dass, whatever, right? Like, just feel that joy of living. They're all possible, but it
Uh-huh.
takes quite a lot of work. I think the aspect that I believe it's fascinating about this is that, like you said, the ice is inevitable, the ice is irrefutable. You're there and it fucking hurts. So, you don't have any more problems, but you just be there to the fullest extension. And that just the way that your body feels after. It's fascinating. I was a member of a cryo club in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
for a few years. So I did
Mm-hmm.
cryo every week, before we met, and all of that. And then the technique of
Mm-hmm.
the breath work
How was that?
plus the wise, it's in far inferior. It's funny because I came back, and one of our partners from our firm, she's awesome, Sarah. Like, she gifted me a cryo session, and it felt, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to sound arrogant, but it was just easy. Like, it was nothing. The freezers that we jump inside the ice club, because and every single time it works, but every single time is also different, right? That's the beauty of it, because it depends on how you're feeling, the
Well,
temperature of the water,
yeah, because of you.
right? So
It's because of you.
um
You're different. The ice is always cold. It's you that are different that day. It's you show up. You're like, okay, today I feel like making excuses, or today I didn't sleep right, so now I'm gonna get out. Okay, that's
and
that's that's where you are now.
That's right. That's right. And what were some of the challenges that you faced, right? Like, when you decided to start this community. And I say community because we are a community, and I appreciate that aspect of it. So for those that don't know, right, like every Wednesdays after the class, people go and grab coffee, because it's Miami. They call it cafecito, which is nice. And then on Fridays, there's usually a happy hour or something else. So the what were some of the challenges, and when did you decide to make it official, actually turn it into a business where people subscribe to attend, frequently? Because there was a progression, I suspect, right?
Yeah, well, when I came back from training with Wim, right after I did my whole journey to become an instructor. And after I came back from training with Wim, I wanted to share it with people, right? So I started taking some of my Budokon students and inviting them to my house to do the breath work and try to figure out cold exposure practices, right? So at the beginning, the biggest challenge is the fact that in Miami there's no cold water, which was the challenge that created the ice club originally. But I was like, okay, cool, come to my house, we're gonna do the breath work, and then how the fuck are we gonna get cold? Like, I mean, if you're in New York, you open the shower, cold water. You're in LA, San Francisco, the water's freezing. But in Florida, the water is at 72 degrees. In Florida, that's not just Miami, because the Florida aquifer is known for very warm water, and it's stable at 72 degrees all year. So, so when you open the shower, 72-degree water, you need 50 degrees Fahrenheit, right, for your body to have a physiological reaction to the cold. So the biggest challenge was that. So first, we were doing something that we used to call the showerator, which was this cooler that I created with these copper coils inside of this nerdy engineering shit that I decided to come up with. So I had this cooler with these copper coils that we ran the water through, and we put a bunch of bags of ice in it. And then there was a shower connected to the exit of that. So it's very similar to a kegerator, to what you use to chill beer. I used it to chill the shower. So we were taking these cold showers, right? And it was hilarious because the water's so warm that it warmed up. And then I bought the freezer, like the freezer that you're used to getting into. And I had one in my house, and it was my daily practice. And then sometimes I would do like a little workshop where my students come. But the problem was that my students kept calling me and say, hey, can I come and use your ice bath? Can I come and use your ice bath in my house? And then my wife was like, what the fuck with all these people coming to my house to get in the ice? So the first challenge that we faced was there's no hot water, there's no cold water. And then the second challenge was I need a venue, right? So at that point, I talked to my teacher to Cameron Shane, to the teacher, my Budokon teacher, and he said, just bring it here, like bring it to Budokon, and we'll just have the freezers here. And then we started from there. And then at the beginning, it was mainly Budokon students, but then people started finding out, and I started doing the workshops, like the one that you came. And I think on our first workshop our first public workshop, we got like 35 people. And I was like, I didn't know this many people knew about it. And Wim Hof was starting to get famous at the time here in the US. He had done the Joe Rogan podcast, but then he did, I think the thing that really blew us up was when he did Goop Lab with Gwyneth Paltrow. And then it just went crazy. So I guess the biggest challenge was just finding a venue, but it wasn't that challenging because I had the Academy for Budokon already. So we just put it out there. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. It just became this thing.
Interesting. How was it training with him? Because at least from where I sit, he seems like a person that went through a lot of pain, managed to overcome that, but at the same time now is a little crazy in a good way. Just interesting, very interesting individual across the board. The one I will say one more thing before you answer. It's just like I was watching this video of him talking to that yogi, Sadhguru, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was so much more joyful and tranquil and had this of a happiness that I think like even Sagura, he was a little annoyed by this force of like positivity. Like I see that guy and it's almost like, wow, that guy he seems like he's always on mushrooms. It's just everything is so lovely and incredible. I appreciate his attitude. It's a very interesting, positive attitude. I mean, to the degree that it becomes just like a persona or a character. But I'd be curious to know, like, how is it like to go into a mountain with that guy?
Honestly, like the guy that you see, what I really like about him is that that's who he is. Like what you see on the interviews, that's who he is. After spending a few days, it kind of tones down a little bit, where he's like, at the beginning, he's like, okay, we're going to fight the war. We're going to win the war against bacteria. We're going to teach everyone that the pharmaceutical companies are blah. He's got all that, right? So he's got his mission of bringing the control of people's health back to the people. So he kind of kicks the door open with that. But then he's just a regular guy. He's not that complicated. He likes drinking beer and he likes talking. He likes playing guitar and singing. He's like a big hippie, He's a yogi, so he's always every day doing yoga. He's also done some martial arts, so we can talk about that with him. And he's just a cool dude, like a nice guy that, we call him Uncle Wim because he's like, like your happy uncle. Like everyone has this one uncle that's always like, woo. That's who he is. He's a cool dude. He knows a ton. They don't let him teach much in the training course because he is too enthusiastic about what he's doing and the research that he's participating in or the message. And sometimes if you let him teach, then you won't get to the material. So he has a team of instructors that teach for him. And then he leads the breathwork sessions. He leads the expeditions. And he's also, I think, especially for those who are training to be teachers that are not teachers from before, I think it teaches people how to be charismatic and how to be a good representative of the message of the practice, right? So he's very kind, very honest, very simple. I feel like he's also very generous with his time, and very, very genuine with his words. So all this being said, he's fucking out of his mind. But nobody normal creates anything exceptional.
Yes,
So
that's right.
for you to make something different, you got it.
No, please, sorry, finish your thoughts. It's just the connection.
For you to create something like this, or for you to look, for you to bring this to the world, the amount of grit and the amount of grind and the amount of evolution that you got to have. Everyone told him for decades that he's a fucking nutcase and that he should not do what he's doing, and he just kept doing it. Talk about a company that's falling apart every fucking day. This is Wim is living off of the Wim Hof method finally now, but for the longest time, people thought he was an idiot. And he was like, no, we're doing this for the better of everybody. Everyone needs to know this. Everyone needs to feel this. Everyone needs to have the ability to do this. And for the longest time, it was a battle of him against everyone that told him that he was crazy. And until the scientists tried to disprove him and couldn't, when the first piece of peer-reviewed scientific paper came out validating what he's been talking about for 40 years, he was in this very unlikely battle, which a lot of other people had tried to do that, and they just never got to the point where he got. So
yeah. And
it's cool.
What you're talking about in the sense of him not being normal, because it's certainly something that I always think about when I'm partnering with founders and people to fund. I've always gotten along with the underdogs, the well-mannered misfits, the crazy ones. It's like no normal individual will build a multi-billion-dollar organization in 6, 7, 8 years. They have had to, have a little chip on their shoulder, be hurt a little bit. There must be a bigger reason than just wanting to make it big, and it usually comes from overcoming suffering in one way or another. That's just the nature of why we are here, probably. So it's I certainly subscribe to that. There's a spectrum though of like what's acceptable. There's like one where it's like if you don't have enough, you're just too boring. And I've also funded people like that, and it's usually not that great. And you also have the other spectrum that's very dangerous, which is the how can I say it? It's the Theranos, the Elizabeth Holmes spectrum that it can be also complicated. So anyway, changing gears a little bit. So, but not that much, I guess. So, what have you? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Something that I kind of wanted to add to that is that, especially since in your audience there's a lot of founders, I feel like the founders that succeed, or the people that create these big movements, or these companies, or these practices, a common denominator is that they are unapologetically who they are. They do what they do for whatever reason, right? You're like, sometimes because you want to prove yourself, sometimes because you believe in what you're bringing to the world and you think it's important, or sometimes because you're too fucking crazy, or because you're stupid, whatever. Like the reason fueling the thing doesn't matter. But the thing is that all these people that make it and leave a mark are very, they're very okay with who they are. And they don't apologize for being who they are or being how they are. Maybe they're not okay with who they are, but they're okay with how they show up in the world. And I think that for founders, that's very important, that for them to be very honest about who they want to be in their life and show up with that, and trust that it's either going to work in the way that they are in being honest, or if by them being honest it doesn't work, then that's not for them. Because a lot of people want to modify who they are to make this thing work. But when this thing works, but you don't get to be who you are, you don't care that the thing works. So for, when I think of Wim, or when I think of Cameron Shane, my Budokon teacher, or I think of anyone that's great that I've ever learned from, they have this way of being that is extraordinary, and they don't care if you don't like it, because they don't have time for you. Like, they don't have time for you, for your preferences. There's a giant amount of people that are ready to do this. And then there's this little group of people that have an opinion about how you're showing up in the world. Fuck you. I'm too busy doing something amazing. So this also brings, as a speaking from my coaching experience, the problems and the suffering of a founder is very different than the suffering of normal people. So the regular help doesn't help these people, right? This is why I think you've found such comfort and such containment in the Ice Club. I know that it's helped you not only perform better, but also in your personal life. It's helped you contain the evil spirits of being a founder.
That's right.
Because every good founder is misunderstood. Like, if you're starting a company that's going to be worth $1 gazillion, it's because you are alone in what you're doing. For now, you're going to recruit people to support you, and we're going to go there. But you got to be crazy and lonely because you have this idea that you see the world should exist with this thing in it. The world should stop existing without this thing. So if you have the brain that creates and produces that thought, and if you have this biology that creates a drive to bring this idea to fruition, know that you're weird as fuck, and that when you suffer, you're going to need special support. So, but you're not alone, because there's a lot of us that have gone through this and we have tools now. It's awesome that now there's tools for this, right? Imagine what Steve Jobs had to go through, like when he had a shit show in his life. Who was there to support him? You know what I mean? Now I can go to the Ice Club 3 times a week. La, 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 and now you're there, and now you're doing great.
Well, true that point.
It's a great time. Great time to be a founder.
It's in a very practical way. I think that the way that it has helped me, and I've seen how other CEOs I've brought on have felt after, is that once you're done doing the breath work and jumping on the ice, it's an hour long. You've been through a lot, and you've had this like deep relaxation, present, moment in which you connect with your soul, and then your body thinks that you're gonna die, and then after that, there's that whole warming up that gets you ready for anything. So it's when, at least for me, when I go, I feel immensely happy, but it just gives you quite a lot of courage as well. So any weird fucking problem that might come up, you're calm at resolving that problem. Just being centered when things are complex and chaotic, it's a superpower in itself. So for me, certainly, maybe I would have resorted to other things to subdue anxiety. And then this has just centered me in an incredible way. And there are other practices and other things that people do, but certainly I think you put it in a beautiful way, that it's just, there's this whole thing about different people that, might need this like different type of extreme therapy, and because it's not for everyone, and I think I've observed that as well. Where you have these people that come up, they come by, they will come by on a Friday, but they never show up again, right? Like the cohort, the retention is interesting. The types of people that this practice retains is fascinating.
Mhm. It is.
So you were talking about my question to you basically was like, what is your ideal morning routine? Um,
So for me, it's about waking up slowly and about not taking in information right away. I like opening my eyes and just getting up slowly and appreciating being awake, being alive. I like getting up and moving, stretching a little bit, just feeling, just landing inside of my body. And then making my way to the kitchen and making coffee. I love making coffee. I like the ritual of making coffee, right? I have my machine, my grinder. I grind the beans. I clean the machine. I load the beans into the filter. I clean it up, put it in the machine jar, listen to it, smell it, run the machine, watch it, and then make a cup of coffee. I love making it probably more than I like drinking it. And then I like going outside and connecting with the environment. I like connecting with either if it's cold outside, just feeling that it's cold and letting it be cold. Or if it's hot, feeling that it's hot and letting it be hot and letting the sunlight hit my face is what I love, honestly. And then after that, starting to process information, starting to welcome the day. If I'm with people, starting the conversations. Um, then once I feel okay, then I'll turn on my phone and start connecting with the world. But for me, the perfect morning is something that starts very slow and progressively, and that I am driving the rhythm of the morning, not life or obligations.
that's perfect. And yeah, feeling like you are in control and having that drive is important. I appreciate a slow morning as well. So, the next question: what it was something that you started doing recently that significantly improved your life? I usually give this example of this little Bluetooth speaker that I bought that I have it in my shower. So it doesn't have to be anything grandiose. It's just like, hey, I started now. I sleep with warm socks, and that has changed. Like, is there something the little things? It could be a big thing as well. You're like looking at.
I I recently started to do improv comedy, which has impacted my life in the most beautiful and positive way. Comedy in theater is something that I enjoyed very much as a child in Argentina growing up, and just going back to that original hobby, it made a big difference in my life, man. Big difference. I'm a lot more expressed. I'm a lot faster in my head. I became more witty, and it's just making me enjoy human interaction a lot more. Not that I wasn't enjoying it before, but it's just taught me a whole different way to listen to people. So yeah, doing theater, big impact for me.
Incredible. What is your biggest fear?
Ooh. I read that question when you sent me the questions before, and I was like, biggest fear. Like, what am I scared of? And I think that the thing that I would be the most scared about is losing my drive, losing my passion for what I do. I see a lot of people fall out of love with what they do, and that scares the crap out of me, man. If I lose this drive that I have, I don't think I would know myself. So if I would have to be scared of something, it would be that losing my mojo, I guess.
Okay. Do you have something that you believe it's true that others typically don't?
Yeah, I believe everything's gonna be all right, always, and I feel that people struggle believing that. But I believe it at a deep core level. Like I know everything's gonna be fine, and I know that I've done enough good in my life to have the universe watch out for me. So um, I do trust to a very deep level that everything's gonna be okay and that everything is fine. When everyone's freaking out, I'm like, this is fine. I don't know why you guys are freaking out. This is gonna be fine. And it causes a lot of conflict sometimes because people think that I don't take the seriousness of the situation right. And I'm like, I think you're taking it too seriously, and that's making it worse.
That's great. Well, I think that that's such a beautiful note for us to end our conversation. But first and foremost, Donato, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, the work you do. I hope that if you're listening and you drop by in Miami, come to the Ice Club, hit me up, hit Donato up. And it's a wonderful, group of people where basically I sound like a cult member, but it's not. Like every time I talk about it, it's just in the end, if you are, like an aggressive builder, man or woman, right? And you just want to get unstuck a little bit and optimize your performance, drop by and hopefully, right, you or Jackie or all the wonderful folks that teach classes there will be there for that. So I appreciate the conversation and thanks for joining us at the Inevitable Podcast, Toronto.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you what you do. I'm very inspired by your work too. I mean, the stuff that you're doing is incredible, and I really appreciate you as a friend. I look forward to developing this not only a working relationship together, because whatever, there'll be time for work always, but more than anything, our friendship and the contributions that you bring to my life. I really love our conversations. I love that we don't agree on everything, and we can still be friends, and we can still have beautiful conversations. I love what you're doing. This podcast is important, and the fact that you take the time, as if you didn't have anything to do, to also bring this to people. I think it's awesome, brother. So thank you for being awesome. Thank you for being in my life. I really appreciate you. And thank you for allowing me to just share with your audience a little bit of my craziness and what I like to do. So really, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's the feeling is mutual, and that's it. Thank you.